everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Split Cafe. Matt, what's going on?
Ah man, life is beautiful. Life is beautiful.
I
And
love
we
it.
got we got our friend Kristin Webster Drake, and we'll get into why we call her Webster here in a little bit because she's got some, in the time that she spent away from, the last episode she recorded to now, she's had some relevations. She found out a whole lot about herself, and I'm so thankful that she wants to share, because I think the information that she's going to share in the next 25-30 minutes can help all professionals, right? And so
Yeah.
Kristin Webster, but Kristin Drake, welcome back to Mind Split. Thank you so much for lending your time and your expertise to our little podcast.
No, it is a giant podcast. Just to make that happen and put it out in the universe because it is. So I'm
Speak
gonna
it into
coin
existence.
speak it into existence and it will be. So I'm gonna coin a term for you, Matt. I'm gonna say relevant revelations. Excuse me, revelations. I'm sorry, I wrote it down the way you said it. Relevant revelations.
Yep.
I
Because
like
yeah, what we were talking about is how we as a people in society in a world, right? We all come from a place of trauma in one way or another, and we're all just trying to navigate this, crazy matrix that has been societally designed or self-inflicted, self-imposed, self-designed, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I like
Right.
that.
Yeah. I mean,
I
we
like
are,
that.
people, I have a girlfriend and she's so cute. And at first I thought, oh my gosh, she's lost her mind. But she said as soon as the Matrix gets plugged in, like sign me up, put me in that cool vat of whatever it is and plug me into the Matrix. And I thought, girlfriend, no, ma'am, your brain is too beautiful and you need to be out in the world and people need to experience your magnificence. And but then I started thinking, wait a second, she's the brilliant one. Because Charles Darwin was, at least this was he was accredited with saying that it's
Yeah.
not, I think we went over this, right? It's not the strongest or the most intelligent of the species that survive, it's the ones that are most adaptable to change. So
Yep.
if
Exactly.
there becomes a matrix and we have to get some type of operating system implanted in our brains, those that oppose it or those that fight it may not evolve, right? Is it those that fight it that are the ones that evolve?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? So adaptability, um, and I think that we as a society need to understand that we all are trauma-based creatures, right?
Beans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You're
Which
exactly right.
I
it
mean,
will
life is
always
full of trauma.
full of trauma, and it's so subjective, right? Because what one person sees as a trauma, another person seems as a challenge, and
Mm-hmm.
it just comes to back
Glass half full, glass half empty type of perspective, right?
And we were
You
just
know,
talking about this with sociology.
you
It's
know,
it's
the
perspective.
I came to a revelation, uh a revelation.
revelation.
Sorry.
It's a hard word.
Revelation. I always
I
I always
saw
mix.
Kristen's eyes,
Yeah.
the
Oh
pages in
yeah,
the
because she's
dictionary were
Webster,
turning.
right? So I came to a revelation a couple of several months ago, right? A couple weeks ago, whatever. And when people would ask me like, "Hey, how's it going?" I my little quirk was, and I thought it was being cute and funny, was I could complain, but no one else is listening, right? So it was just kind of, that was my like little response that I had programmed in my, in my DNA or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I thought about it doing several of these mind split episodes and talking to various clinicians and so forth, that could be frowned upon as having a negative kind of connotation. Like there's something that I want to complain about.
Yep.
And
Right.
that could be like over my head and following me, right? If you cast out negative energy is going to be cast back, right? It's going to
Right.
follow you.
Right.
So I got in an Uber ride, and I've shared this story before. I got into an Uber ride, and this gentleman had the best attitude, and I asked how his day was going. He was like, "Life is beautiful." Now, this gentleman is an Uber driver, and his name is Ray, by the way, and
Kudos to Ray.
he had the best attitude. He just started that day. He got his LLC for his transportation company. He's going to start supporting his family. He was going to find 2 or 3 drivers to work under him. Like, things were happening for Ray. And his answer was, "Life is beautiful." And I said, "You had the most beautiful outlook. I'm going to start using that, Ray." And so now I've, yeah, there are things that I could complain about, right?
Right.
But if I come with that attitude of life is beautiful, whether I'm going through something or there's an obstacle in my way or whatever, hey, at least I'm alive and I'm blessed to be able to find that solution for that problem. And it's really, really changed my whole, like, the
Outlook.
anxiety that I used to feel, that, like, it just kind of has,
Mindset.
yes, the mindset
Mindset.
has definitely rewired. And now it's like, sure, I have bad days, but if I keep telling myself life is beautiful, it is. I'm
Mhm.
blessed, and so
I will say that Matt does say that. He says that whenever I ask him what's going on or how's it going, that's the first thing he says.
life is beautiful,
Life is
you know?
beautiful. Well, and people will say, "Oh, well, it's easy to say that life is beautiful because, and this is coming from one of the clinicians and very dear friends of mine that I work with because I was doing a presentation that I invited her to, talking about my story. And she said, people would look at you and think you have there's no crack in your foundation, like you're solid. You have
Yeah,
no problems, no worries, no trials and tribulations, no struggles, no, you are solid. Not knowing and not even seeing the turmoil and turbulence and just blah that has been this journey. And so, going back to the professional world, what I have finally learned through this journey, just that literally just started April of this year, is that instead of seeing people going through a mental health challenge, we'll say, right? Because challenge accepted and I won. How about seeing that as something that's a weakness and turning it around and seeing that as, I want that person on my team. I want
Yes.
that person in my executive leadership because if she can overcome all of that and still keep her wits about her most of the time, right?
yeah,
Most-
most of the time.
Kidding. No, but
Yeah,
I'm very successful and I'm very
yeah,
smart. And it's because of my brains. And guys, I want the world. This goes back to my mission. I want the world to know how resilient our brains are. It doesn't matter how much you think you've destroyed your brain with substances, with negative thoughts, with living in tornadoes of anxiety. There's no brain that is damaged enough to not snap back. And
right.
in fact, and this is what I'm going to stop and I'm going to drop the mic because in fact, the worst turmoil and hell a person can find themselves in and get out of that hell, whether they started out by escaping, right? We talked about that, I think, in my first
Yeah,
podcast. I was a fugitive on the run from that hell, and I, forced myself back down in that hell, and I climbed out a warrior and triumphant, using a stepladder with my therapist and assistants, and now I'm a victor, and that doesn't exist anymore.
yeah,
But what it's done to my brain and how quickly I can problem solve and I love just talking to a person, Matt. I want you to give me a problem, something that's really weighing on you because I want to use my trauma brain and its
yeah,
magnificence to because we stuck in all the negative options. There may be 100 solutions to your problem.
yep,
99 negative. I will find that one positive solution for you because I've had to
Yeah.
survive my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
Well,
further down you've been, the further up you can shoot yourself forward or
you know
up
that
or forward or
I'm
whatever.
Yeah.
there's a beautiful commercial Nike did several years ago with Michael Jordan, and he got out of his car, and it's simplistic, and he's walking from the car to the locker room, and it's his voice, and he's like, basically, to summarize it, he says, I've missed over 12,000 or however many thousands of shots, and my team has trusted me to take the game winning shot X amount of times, and I've missed and whatever. He was like, but it's because of those that I'm successful,
Correct.
because he's learning from those setbacks. The setback is not failure, the setback is the lesson to teach him how to become successful, right?
And
Like,
those failures are gonna keep
yep,
happening, guys, until you
Your
learn
whole
your
damn
freaking
life.
lesson.
yep,
Learn your lesson, the faster the better. And Matt, I love that analogy because it goes back to the old, is a super old school analogy. I think the cow versus the buffalo. Are you a cow or are you a buffalo?
yeah,
Right? Well, cows, they can they run from storms, and then eventually they can't run anymore, and then the storm just takes them over, and then they just have to accept their fate and be like, okay, whatever, I'm stuck in this storm and it sucks and life is miserable. And they get stuck in that storm for a lot longer than a buffalo who sees that storm on the horizon now, because I've been through the worst storms that could ever be created by
mm-hmm,
the gods or nature or whatever. And the bull goes, all right, I see you. Let's do this. And just
yeah,
full on charges towards that storm because the buffalo knows that the faster I get through this storm and learn my lessons, it's gonna suck. It is gonna suck and it's gonna
yeah.
hurt. And sometimes you may
You're gonna get scraped. Yeah.
correct, but you get out of it faster.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're no longer a victim. You're not a survivor, right? Because you're stronger than that. You now are bigger than that storm. So my storm wasn't just a cool thunderstorm with cute little spirally
Yeah.
clouds up there, right? It was like biggest hurricane you can imagine with a tsunami, right? And then just go ahead and add, because spelling is fun, and then just go ahead and add 5 F5 tornadoes to that storm. And that's what I had to do from April 19th of 2024 to second week of September.
Wow. That's insane. And I mean, you shared with us off camera, but I guess, we kind of talked about you wanting to do this episode to help professionals. In the 10 minutes that we've got remaining, what advice would you give to professionals that are dealing with either tough patients or dealing with trauma in their own right? Like, what advice would you give to them to to kind of weather that storm and be that buffalo and go head on through that that storm?
I'm glad you said that because I was going to say something that would sound very curt and say stop being cows and be the buffalo. But in all seriousness, it takes a lot of work, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, not everybody can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I want what I want professionals to know is that you imagine a bow and arrow. We'll use, right, because I live my life in allegory, which is
Yeah.
so I like to use analogies. Imagine a bow and arrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Professionals who have unresolved, unhealed trauma of their own, right? Professionals of any level, any type, whatever. Imagine the three brain states, which we can expound on later, right? You've got your survival brain state, your emotional brain state, and your executive brain state. Well, for 41.9 years, I lived my life in survival state. So imagine a bow and arrow, right? The more tension you pull back on that bow to propel that arrow forward, that was me using everything that I had to stay in survival mode. I had no choice.
Your
That's all I
primal
knew.
brain was in overdrive.
That's all I knew. I knew some
Yeah.
emotional state, right? Obviously, I've been able to access my executive state, or I wouldn't be professional and successful. However, 41.9 years, guys, of pulling that back in April when that arrow was released, the same amount of force and energy that I was using to be in that survival state, I with all of the force in the universe, lightning speed propelled into the executive state, which sounds great, right? I'm so smart and I love learning. And so I'm just all up in the YouTubes and learning everything and everything and everything, and I'm absorbing it. And I'm like, what the hell's going on with my brain? Because usually I have to watch things 5 times because I have all of these intrusive thoughts, or I have to read a book, a paragraph 20 times, or just throw it across the room because I can't focus. Well, my executive state of my brain, my frontal cortex, has been basically defibrillated. And I am so much more productive. I guarantee you, because I'm a productive person. Anyone will tell you that knows me in my work environment, I can do more in an 8-hour period than a lot of people can in a week. And that's not bragging, that's just true because my brain, right? Trauma
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
Remember, it's one of my trauma brain strengths. It's my superpower. So I get a lot of work done. But now having a system to all of that thought and energy and work, and everything now is not completely linear, right? Like my ducks are still kind of running now amok, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, I got like 3 in line.
What was the without not giving too much, without being too nosy, but what was it that made you lead to the idea of like, hey, I need a change for me, and I need to kind of explore what's really going on, right? And again, we're running short on time, so I want to protect your privacy, right?
Sure.
But what was it that
Yeah.
that kind of propelled you to say, hey, like, Kristin, you need to really deal with this, and
Yeah, for
the
sure.
the bow and arrow, you can't pull it back anymore. Like, we need to talk. Like,
So what
what
really
was
The
it?
breaking point.
Yeah.
the release of the arrow was actually my provider prescribing an SSRI.
Wow.
Simple.
And right, it so what it did was, in my thought processes, right, it shut down my survival brain thought process. What
Yeah.
it didn't do, which I'm working on and I'm going to fix it, is it didn't shut down what I feel physiologically and physically, because I'm still experiencing that anxiety. So I still
Yeah.
have like the racing heart. Sometimes I'll still have the shortness of breath. So my body's still feeling that anxiety and panic every day, but my brain isn't, and my thoughts. And so it's
Processing is
just weird.
different.
So what released it, and it was basically just all these learnings, right? And I thought learnings, and I thought, I want to start fixing the issues that were caused because of this trauma, and I'm just going to start picking out all of my cognitive distortions, right? Or your errors of thinking one
Mm-hmm.
by one, and start fixing them within myself. Well, I told you guys I have fasciitis when pain is being administered to me, and I don't have control over the amount of pain that is being administered, whether it's medical or somebody trying to inflict pain. I pass out.
Mm.
So I thought, I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna fix it. Cause I had a situation actually where I was getting Botox and hit a nerve and it was so painful. I started to go through the pass out process. And this RN, who is my beautiful RN esthetician, she kept me from passing out. She kept me from it. And so I thought, cool, if I could do that once, I can fix
You can
this.
do it again. Yeah.
So teaser, because we're out of time. Now we're gonna have to do another episode. I promise I didn't do that on purpose, but some things, some connections are not uh known or not obvious for very important reasons.
Mm.
So I made a connection to the origination story, right, of me experiencing fasciitis to pain being administered to me that I have no control
So
over.
there was a
Think of that.
connection of why you have this.
So this is why our brains are brilliant. My
Yes.
brain stem, because of my limbic system going, oh my God, this is so much pain. The worst pain you can ever imagine at what I thought was 8 was actually at 6.
Yeah.
And so what my brain did, because it was literally life or death.
It protected yourself, pretty much.
And I
Yep.
passed out because I only
Yeah.
remember that one part of that
Oh.
portion of the
We
trauma.
we could have you on for many episodes. Chris, I know we're running short on time, but
I know.
I know there was
just want
one
the
thing
world
that you wanted to
know.
bring up. Yeah, you wanted to bring up, and I want to get that in before we leave. So
Yeah. So,
go ahead.
Kristin, when you had mentioned something about everyone seeing the pristine side of people and no one knows what's going on in the head, the turmoil, the crazy things, the battles that we fight in our heads, and that's never seen. So I actually ran into a post today, which go check it out. It's recovery.com. The chief growth officer, Cliff, he actually had a really cool post today. And he says, I'm going to read some of it because it's a really long one, but it says, do you know any Fortune 1000 CEOs who are openly in recovery? I have a theory about this, and I have a theory as to why we don't hear about them. Stigma. And then it goes out and it gets really deep into it and lists a lot of things. It's a really good post. You should go tell them we sent you there. But it made me think that no one knows what's going on in anyone's head, but
The
it needs to
battles,
be
the
spoken
demons, yeah.
about.
Right.
It needs to be spoken about to break down the barriers and the stigmas, just like Cliff mentioned.
Yeah.
CEOs don't talk about that thing, and it's probably because they don't want to look weak or useless or that I've had a mistake. But what you
Yep.
just said is mistakes make us better. They get us to where we need to be. And I think it needs to be spoken about.
The skeletons in our closet are what make us brilliant and beautiful and successful. And people who are truly courageous are going to start having these conversations because I am damn good at what I do and I love what I do. And so therein lies my mission, Chris. I want professionals to know that you going through the yuck and seek treatment, right? If you need it, there are so many sources of treatment out there, whether it be a private therapist, a med management provider, do you need PHP, like higher levels, whatever it is
Mind
that
Split
you
Cafe
need.
podcast.
But
I mean,
Or the
correct.
magazine.
Whatever it is
magazine.
that you need, it just so I just want people to embrace the struggles that they've had and realize how magnificent their brains are to have beaten that,
Yes.
to have become the storm as the CEO of whatever.
I don't
And
see it as a weakness. Like you got to see it as like a
it's a huge
triumph because
strength.
you literally survived it.
I want people who on my team who can overcome the deepest, darkest depths of hell and be more
Absolutely.
magnificent because of
Yeah,
it.
I
want
totally
people like that.
get it. I totally get it. I do see from the standpoint though of the Fortune 100
Fortune 1000.
CEOs, they have shareholders and boards
Exactly.
Yeah, but see, that's
to
the
answer
thing.
to.
And
And
that's
That's
the
so,
problem.
But so
you know,
what you just said is there's a stigma against it.
Right.
And
Look at their
that's
look at what they're
I mean, you
doing.
explained it perfectly, Matt, that there's a stigma, and that's right there is the biggest stigma, and you explained it perfectly.
and
Look
you
at
know
their output.
what's
Look at their
what's
output.
what's funny is not funny at all, but there was a basketball player by the name of Kevin Love several years ago. He did an article, and he basically wrote a letter, and he talked about his anxiety attack that happened mid-game, and his dealing with mental health. Before that, mental health in the sports or the locker room or on the court or on the field, whatever the sport is, was
Shut down.
taboo.
Yeah.
You know, when I was playing, it was what everybody was going through. You just it's your turn. You got to deal with it. Right. So they just kind of, squashed it. But now it's becoming more prevalent. There's more clinicians, or there's more, people, professionals that accompany these sports teams to help with, it's becoming a normality. Right. Yep. And so I think it's unfortunate that these Fortune 100 companies are in that archaic day and age of, I've got to suppress it because of, stock price or the board or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Eventually it'll come to pass where we want our CEO to go seek out help or be engaged with therapists or professionals that help him regulate and manage his time and his stress and his well-being, because ultimately that's going to do well for our company in the long run. If he's right in the brain and there's a balance in his life, then guess what? There's going to be a balance, and there's going to be a rightness with the company and the output and the productivity.
Correct.
100%.
So it's just unfortunate that it's in an archaic steel that
it's fine. This is how
I like the way you say that, archaic thought process. That
it is.
I mean, that's what it is.
This is how we start a movement.
Yeah.
It starts with the conversation.
It's the dinosaurs versus the cockroaches, right? The dinosaurs the dinosaurs didn't make it. The cockroaches learned to survive and adapt.
Yep.
Oh, that's true.
There you go.
I have an entophobia. That's a word. I don't know. Well, that's also another teaser, right? It could be a word. It's probably right. Also another teaser is just to say that yes, my brilliant brain protected myself physically by passing out, but my beautiful therapist, this was the realization that I made that kind of broke me a little bit and started with the revelations, right?
Yep.
Was so my brain protected my body, but who stayed behind to protect my psyche?
Yeah.
I was like, nobody. Like me. And literally just me. And she goes, right. But how are you professional? How are you okay? How are you? You know what I mean? Like, who stayed behind to protect Kristin's psyche?
Yeah.
Oof. Mini Kristin.
Oh, that's a teaser for the next episode.
Oh, so, yeah, good one.
Yeah, Kristin, we cannot wait to have you back, and thank you so much for lending your time and sharing with us, and we'll get you back on next episode.
Muchas blessings, guys. Thank you for everything. And I'm not gonna hang up on accident right now.
Okay. All right. Until next week, guys. We'll see you soon.